It's more for people to join in. We are expecting more people, and we'll begin shortly. Thank you, Patrick, for sharing. I hope more people can respond as well. We are expecting few more people to join in. I'll give one last minute and then I'll begin the session. In the meanwhile, people who have just joined us, feel free to share in the chat which grade about your child's name, current grade, and which school they are currently studying in. The more information we have, the better we can tailor our discussion today. I can see so many of you joining in. Thank you, Nidhi, for responding. Okay, so we have a grade 9 student studying in SOTA. For those of you who are joining our session for the very first time, thank you, and we welcome you to our session. We have another student who is in SAS, grade 10. That's amazing. Okay, so let's get started. We have a UWC kit as well. Great, awesome. Thank you guys for sharing. Thank you for joining us today for our webinar on investing in top US and UK university education. I'm delighted to see so many of you are looking for information to support your children's overseas education journey. This event Crimson is hosting in collaboration with Stashaway. Stashaway is a digital investment platform that was launched in 2017 to empower people to build and protect wealth in the long term. Tonight, we will discuss one of the most significant investments you can make, an investment in world-class education at top universities, and how you can academically and financially plan for it. So let's get started. Next slide, please. Okay, before we begin, some housekeeping rules. You will see that your microphones and cameras are turned off, so it will be turned off throughout the webinar. Please do not submit any questions in the chat box. We will have a Q&A session at the end, so make sure that you submit all your questions using the Q&A box at the end below that you can see. And please do not use raise hand function during the webinar. Feel free to upvote the questions that you want us to answer. We will be launching a lot of polls as well throughout the webinar, so make sure that you participate in it and make it as interactive as possible. Next slide, please. A quick introduction about myself. I'm Nikita, your host for today's session. I did my MBA in finance and I'm working in the higher education space since last 7 years now, helping families access the best education opportunities globally. And specifically at Crimson, I work closely with organizations like Stashaway to create value for our prospective families. Next slide, please. This is what we'll cover today, a quick introduction about Crimson and Stashaway, followed by panel discussion with our expert speakers from Crimson and Stashaway, and followed by how we can help you in this journey and a Q&A session at the end. Next slide, please. A quick introduction about Crimson and what we do. Crimson is a global higher education consultancy that helps students prepare and get into some of the top universities in the US, UK, Canada, and Europe. We started in 2013 as a traditional college consultancy, helping students with university applications only. And today, we are a one-stop solution for everything related to higher education. Right from academic tutoring to standardized tutoring, career exploration, university shortlisting, extracurricular mentoring, college tours, boarding school admissions, research opportunities, and work experiences. These opportunities ensure that our students are well-rounded and highly competitive, not just for college admissions, but for their future careers. We are 100% virtual college counseling company, and our Singapore office serves as the regional hub for families based in Malaysia, Philippines, Myanmar, and Singapore. So as I said, we started in 2013, and today we have 20 plus global offices with 2,400 mentors worldwide. Next slide, please. This is our overall numbers. This year, we had 1,100 plus acceptances to Ivy League universities with 370 plus offers to Oxford and Cambridge. And these are some of individual statistics that you can see for some of the top US and UK universities where acceptances are less than 5%. Next slide, please. If we just look at Singapore numbers based on our latest Singapore admissions application cycle, a lot of our Singapore students got into Oxford, Cambridge, Princeton, Cornell, UPenn, Northwestern, and more. And if you go to the next slide, I'm very proud to share that this year we had 9 offers for Oxford and 14 from Cambridge, just from Singapore. And out of these 14 offers for Cambridge, we had 2 acceptances for medicine place in Cambridge, whereas Cambridge just gave 22 offers to overseas students for medicine application, and 2 of them came from Crimson Singapore. Next slide, please. These are some of our early round results for Ivy League universities for this cycle. 106 offers to Ivy League universities thus far, 8 to Harvard, 10 to Brown, 9 Stanford, 4 MIT. And we are very proud we could be part of their journey. 1 acceptances is 1 life changed. So really proud to share this. Next slide, please. Last but not the least, to connect with us, we do share a lot of resources on our social media channels. We have a specific WhatsApp group for parents, and we have Instagram, Telegram channels for our students, wherein we share a lot of free resources, ebooks, infographics that you can, get access to and be updated about. So feel free to scan these QR code and join our, social media channels. I'll leave for another 5 seconds so you can scan the QR code. Next slide, please. With that, I would like to introduce our first speaker from StashAway. First, we have Nandini Joshi. She's Deputy CEO at StashAway. Nandini brings valuable perspective as both a financial expert and a parent of 2 teenagers. She started her investment journey at age 20 and is passionate about making investing accessible to everyone. A very warm welcome to you, Nandini. I'll hand over to you to introduce yourself and share more about StashAway with our audience.
Thanks very much. Hi, everybody. So I'm Nandini from StashAway. I've been with the company now for over 5 years. As Nikita shared, our mission is really to help people build wealth and protect. So, we are very focused on making sure that the big goals in your life are taken care of: retirement, kids' education. These are expensive goals that we all aspire to attain. I'm also a licensed representative by the Monetary Authority of Singapore here in Singapore, as well as we have other, wealth advisors who are licensed representative. So in the future after this, if you want to speak to any of them, do not hesitate. But yeah, looking forward to sharing a little bit of information that might, just help you set on the right path so that you can get the financial part also sorted out as you focus on really your kids' dreams. Next slide, please. So as I shared, our mission is really to make investing accessible to everybody. The way we do it is, making it simple, bringing intelligent strategies, but in a simplified manner. None of us want to spend all our time managing our money, and making it cost effective. And you'll see, why that really matters. Apart from Singapore, we are also present in 4 other markets. We are licensed by the regulators over there. And obviously, as a tech, as a fintech company, we are very proud of the recognitions that we have had, and also the backing that we have of strong players in the market from an investment perspective. Next slide, please. So just, a little bit of an overview, and one of our missions is really helping people achieve their goals in a simple manner. We have always believed that the industry makes it unnecessarily complicated with jargon, for a lot of us. So, in terms of building your wealth, there is a core foundation part that we focused on. So our portfolios that allow you to just, focus on that foundational aspect of building long-term wealth. So we have expert managed portfolios. You can also, build your own portfolios. But this is what most of us really need to get, to our biggest goals in life. Apart from that, we advocate very, very, smart cash management. At least in Singapore, the average bank account gets a 0.05% interest rate. None of our lives is changing with that, so we all need to pay a little bit more attention. And then, we have other products as well, just to complete the investment suite. But today I'll really focus on how, our big goals really can be achieved with very simple investment strategies, and so that we can focus on other things in our life that are more important. Next slide, please. We also have Stashaway Reserve. So as a digital player, we can only offer advice to accredited investors, but we do have wealth advisors, and as I shared in the earlier slide, products also from private market investment side. But at any point of time, if you'd like to explore this further, feel free to reach out to us. And our wealth advisors usually will walk you through very clear financial planning, as well as your investment strategy personalized to you. Otherwise, we pride ourselves on our app being able to do everything and make sure that people are confident in making their financial decisions. I'll hand it over to you, Nikita.
Yes, thank you so much, Nandini. That's really helpful. Next, I would like to introduce Ishan. Ishan is our senior US strategist at Crimson, and he's a graduate from New York University. With 4 years of experience as an NYU officer and a truly global background, Ishan has helped numerous students gain admissions to prestigious institutions like Cornell, UPenn, and Columbia. So over to you, Ishan.
Thank you, Nikita. So just a little bit of background about me before we kick things off. So I went to New York University. I got my bachelor's in economics and psychology. Much like a lot of families on the call today, I also went to high school in Singapore. I attended the Singapore American School. And so I've been fortunate enough to work with several different students and families based in Singapore, but in the general Southeast Asia region, helping them with their goals to get into some of the top universities in the US. And so, my time as an officer at NYU has kind of gave me a peek inside the world of higher education. And so I kind of understand what US universities really look for when they are assessing candidates and admitting those who they feel are a fit. So without further ado, I think we will start with a panel discussion to kind of go into the depths of what it takes to get in, as well as kind of the financial side of planning for that big investment.
Thank you, Ishan. So let's get started with our panel discussion. Before we dive in, I would like to get a sense of where our audience is in their journey. So please participate in our quick poll about which education system you're currently planning to send your kids to. And yeah, I launched the poll just now. Where your child is aiming to study at? Is it US, UK, both, or you're not sure yet? Okay, so with that, I'll end the poll. And so we have many who are not sure yet, and that's completely all right. Moving on to the next slide, please. Yeah. So, Ishan, to begin with, could you walk us through the key differences between the US and UK education system? So, we can get this discussion started, and then we can discuss more on the cost part.
Yep, sure, absolutely. So, of course, if you're looking to go to the US or UK, one is there's going to be a difference in the cost. And so, that is one of the differences that we will be going through. There's obviously a location difference. But aside from that, there's also quite a key difference when it comes to the different cultures of universities in the US or UK, the duration. So typically in the US, university is about 4 years, and in the UK, it tends to be a little bit shorter, in 3 years. And then in the US, they allow for a little bit more course flexibility, so you don't necessarily need to know exactly what you want to study before you go in. In the UK, you kind of need to have a better idea as to what you want to major in and then kind of stick with that. So there are key differences that we will be going through in the next few slides, but I think it would be nice for us to launch a poll right now to see what our audience thinks is the general cost to study in the UK or the US, and this is in Singapore dollars.
Okay, last second, and I'll end the poll here. I'll share the results with you. Yeah, so majority of them think it's around 300 to 500K.
Okay, great. So let's go a little bit deeper into what are the cost differences as well as the system differences. So let's go over some of the key system differences to begin with. So as I mentioned, 4 years versus 3 years. In the US, it tends to be a little bit more broad, right? So they focus on what's called the liberal arts model. So they want you to be exposed to various different disciplines. Maybe if you're a STEM student, they also want you to have some humanities as part of it. If you're a humanities student, they want to make sure that you're still getting that foundation on the STEM side. Whereas on the UK, it's really more of an intense deep dive into the major that you are interested in. And so, of course, in terms of putting together your application as well, there is quite a significant difference between the two as well. So for the US, and this is something we're going to be covering a little bit closer later on in the slides, the US really, really emphasizes on being a well-rounded applicant, right? So along with your academics, they want to make sure that you are showcasing things outside of the classroom. So there's a big, big focus on the extracurricular side of things, right? What competitions have you done? What awards have you won? Things like that. Whereas on the UK side, they are a little bit more focused on the academic side of things. And then, of course, they want to see some things beyond that. So some super curriculars is what it's called. So extracurriculars, which are kind of very standout. But they don't need that really broad range of extracurriculars like the US does. One other point I'll make in terms of the differences between the two, if you are looking to go into some of the professional pathways like medicine or law, the UK tends to be a little bit easier of a journey, right? So if you are interested in those, you can apply for and get into medicine or law directly for undergrad in the UK, but in the US, you'll have to major in something else for undergrad and then apply to medical school or law school separately. So it can be, again, a longer journey. So those are some of the key system differences. Now, in terms of the costs, that's another big one. So between the US tends to definitely be have a bit more of a markup rather than the UK. So in terms of tuition, and so first I'll talk about things in Singapore dollars, and then I know we have some participants from Malaysia over here as well, so we can talk about the differences in ringgit too. So for the US, the tuition is between 40 to about 85,000 Singapore dollars. And so you can see that as opposed to the UK, it kind of caps out at around maybe 68 to $70,000. So there is that gap in terms of tuition. Room and board is can be pretty similar. Of course, it depends on which city in the UK or which city in the US you might go to, but that sits at around 20,000 per year. And so the total for the US now, depending on whether you go to a public university or a private university, so there can be quite a big range. Public universities tend to be a little bit cheaper than private universities. And of course, aside from all this, you can look into things like scholarships and things and subsidies. But the total in per year is in the US is about $60,000 to $100,000, whereas in the UK it caps out at around 90. And so keep in mind, though, that on the US side, there is that one extra year. It's 4 years rather than 3 years. So I think that also adds to the cost. So for the US side of things, it's in typically the total amount for the entire degree is kind of in that 300 to 400 range. Whereas on the UK side of things, with that 1 year less, it's more in the 200 to 260, 270,000 range, right? And so one thing I'll also mention is the US is oftentimes much more amenable to financial aid, whereas in the UK it is, financial aid is seldom given. And then both have some scholarships, so merit-based scholarships or athletic scholarships. So, those are things that you can look into as well. Now, in terms of Malaysian ringgit, so the key difference, as you can see highlighted over here, so it's about, on the US side, it's between 800,000 and 1.4 mil. And then on the UK side of things, it's between 600,000 and 900,000. So that's kind of the key breakdown. You can see that the US is definitely substantially higher. But as we will be talking about in further on in the presentation, there's also a difference in the return on investment, kind of the salaries that you draw from the US or the UK, depending on which country you have graduated from. So maybe I will ask Nandini, our Stashaway expert here, as to what these costs look like 5 or 10 years down the line, because there's one thing to look at what the costs are right now. Some of the families might be applying after a few years, and I've seen trends of prices going up, inflation, things like that. So would love to hear from you as to what we might have to look forward to.
Yeah, thanks, Ishan. There are two things, to think about. There is one which is, just the inflation in general that, we all have to deal with in all of our price of goods. And as you can see at the moment, that we are actually in a much more higher inflationary regime, and we don't know for how long that will continue. It's something that we think, and we see that central banks across the world are trying to curb, but you have to prepare prudently for it. But other than that, there is also an inflation which is linked to the cost of especially the top universities. And this is something that is not linked usually to just the price of goods in the market. It's linked to the brand name of the universities. It's linked to the scarcity of resources, and this is something that we have seen, in the last 10 to 15 years, that the inflationary cost, the growth in cost of tuition is not always only in line with the inflation that is attached to goods and services. Next slide, please. So if you think about from here, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years down the line, you can see, just a very simple impact of if we take the smaller numbers on this presentation, which is around the room and board, Ishan shared the $20,000 cost, that is benchmark today. That in 5 years, moves to a 22. And this is probably more linked to your normal inflation that we all experience through goods and services. And that, goes up to, if you're 15 years out, up to 27,000, and then you multiply that by 3 or by 4 years. But as you can see in tuition, in bigger numbers, it obviously grows up faster, even if, as I see a lot of parents who said their kids are anywhere around grade 9 to grade 10. So, even that you're looking at, the cost going up to 420 SGD, in 4 years, 5 years time at 2030. And then, the 3 or 4 years that your kids are actually going to spend in university. And so it's really important to actually look at the year that you have to deal with the expense, and think about what the cost is going to be at that time, and think about the preparation before now, for that amount, rather than looking at the amount just today. Next, Ishan, I think back to you.
Yeah. Thanks, Nandini. This is quite helpful. The numbers, if you just look at it, it looks pretty daunting. So I would like to ask you, Ishan, like given the price tag and the cost of education which is rising, do you think, top university education is really worth it? Is it just about the prestige, or do you see intangible benefits, for yourself, even for your students we are working with?
Yeah, definitely. So, of course, there are some big numbers being thrown about, and so one is to look at it just directly from the financial standpoint, which is of course important. After I graduate, am I going to be able to earn a salary that really is worth it for this amount that I've put in upfront, which we will get into some of the numbers. But aside from that, I think there is a lot to be said about the things that are a little bit more intangible, right? And so, for example, the global perspective that you get from being in a completely new, different environment, right? So that price tag is not just for the education that you're getting, but it's also for the overall experience, right? And so being able to meet people from various parts of the globe, I think it's no surprise to anyone here that the US and the UK are two of the markets which attract the most diverse set of students from around the world. So I think in no other place rather than these two would you get that breadth of diversity, being able to interact with not only your peer group, students, faculty from various different parts of the world. And so, having been to New York University myself, studying there and working there, I found that, after being in this bubble of Singapore, it was really nice to be able to kind of find my wings a little bit in the United States, in New York, right? And so I think there's definitely something to be said about that. But I know that, of course, the price tag is something that we don't want to neglect either. That's something that we definitely want to address here. So let's talk a little bit about the annual income for graduates of some of the schools in the top 50 US universities, right? So we have some of the top schools like MIT and UPenn and Yale on here. And so you can see that, you've put in an upfront cost of, say, in the US, say 300,000. But the expected payout for in the first 5 years of graduation is already in that 90 to 100,000 range. And so this is in US dollars of students who have gotten jobs in the United States. And so, of course, it can depend on where you end up getting your job. A lot of students who go to university in the US would like to eventually get a job there. People have gone to the UK. And so it definitely gives you a bit more of an in into those markets, right? If you've gone to undergrad there, you've gotten to network with different companies. They have on-campus interviews and things like that. So you have the potential and a much higher potential to get some of these kind of jobs which pay these kind of returns. And so, of course, that is in the first 5 years. And then as your career progresses, that number only goes up, right? So definitely, these kind of key brand name universities in the US will give you an edge in the US, but then also that recognizability permeates to outside of the US as well. And so if we look at the key the earnings in different professions, not only in the US, but in Singapore and the UK, you can see that, for students who have graduated from a university in the US or the UK, they command pretty, of course, it depends on the profession that you go into, but they command pretty substantial salaries, right? And so I will make note that depending on what market you're in, you could be paid very differently for the exact same profession. So, for example, to take the top row over here, if you're looking to be a lawyer, in the US, the average salary would be $130,000. In Singapore, it would be less at 114, and then in the UK, it would be even lower than that at 90,000. And so, of course, that takes into account various different things, but sometimes these numbers can be a little bit misleading as well, given the fact that in the US, yeah, sure, you might be making $130,000 base, but there's a much higher income tax over there, right? Whereas in Singapore, the income tax is much lower, as well as in the UK. So net between Singapore and the US, the take home might be very, very similar, right? So, but these are things to consider as to, when you send your child to the United States or the UK, what is their end ambition? Are they looking to come back to kind of Malaysia, to Singapore? Are they looking to get jobs where they are? And then, there is a difference. But the fact of the matter is that no matter where, if you end up in Asia, the US, the UK, the brand value of some of these US, UK schools is definitely going to hold you in good stead to command some of those higher salaries.
That's
So
pretty helpful. That's pretty helpful, Ishan. Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's basically understanding the cost is crucial, but of course, equally important is to understand how we can secure places in these institutions. If you could share, little bit difference on the admissions requirement for these universities as well.
absolutely. So as I was mentioning before, packaging your applications to different universities looks different if you're applying to the US or the UK, right? So there are certain things which the US really emphasizes. As I mentioned, there's this big emphasis on well-roundedness and extracurriculars, whereas on the UK side, it's a bit more on the academic side. So let me break that down for you a little bit. So on the US side, about 40% is on your academics, right? So whether that is your GPA at school, what courses you've taken, whether you've taken the SAT or ACT, and how you've performed on those, it's almost like it's the first hurdle, right? But that really is just the first hurdle, because there is the next 30%, and I really want to focus in on this second bucket over here, which is the extracurriculars and leadership. So if you are interested in business, for instance, they're looking to really see, what have you done outside of the classroom to showcase that interest in business, right? Have you done any internships, any research programs, any competitions? There are several student business case competitions, things like that. And then aside from things that are directly to do with what you want to maybe pursue, they're looking to see, are you an artist? Have you dabbled in art? Are you an athlete? Are you a musician? So they're looking to see whether you have, that breadth when it comes to your extracurriculars. And then also they love to see some amount of community service as well, right? Giving back to the community through, whether it's through an organization at school, or whether you've started up something on your own or are participating in an organization outside of school. And then the very last 30% is to do with your essays and interviews. So in terms of essays, there is one Common App essay, or a personal statement essay, which is sent to pretty much all the universities that you apply to. And that's meant to kind of showcase, again, who you are as an individual. And then there are supplemental essays as well. So if you're applying to Yale, they might ask you, why Yale? What is it about Yale that really attracts you to it? So you can see that, there are these various different components which are not that far apart in terms of their weightage, right? And so it's important to kind of make sure that all three of these different criteria are really strong when putting the application together. Now, to contrast that, on the UK side of things, you can see there is a heavy skew towards the academic side of things, right? So definitely making sure that your IB scores or A-level scores are top notch and your standardized test scores, that's going to take the most importance, right? And then on top of that, you need to pay some attention to your extracurriculars and have a few of those super curriculars, as I had mentioned. There is also, they've introduced more essays in the last couple of years, and they also have an interview process, but again, the weightage for that is much, much less. So again, a few things to keep in mind as you're deciding whether you want to apply to the US or the UK. If you are extremely, if a student is extremely academically oriented, but perhaps don't have so much to do with extracurriculars, the UK might be a better fit. Or if they're looking to go into an industry like law or medicine. I will also say that for law and medicine, the actual medical system in the UK is very akin to the one in several places in India or in Asia, like Singapore and India. So you can use that license to practice over here, whereas in the US, it's quite different, right? So again, something to consider.
That's really helpful, Ishan. Thanks for summarizing that. Based on your experience, if you could share, what are some common challenges parents and students face when they are, preparing for this admissions process?
Yeah, absolutely. So, there are various different factors which you face as challenges talking to many different families and parents. I think that one is, I think Nandini might talk about this a little bit later, but a lack of financial planning is definitely one, right? And so I think that too many parents are keen to see students or their children go to some of these top universities and things like that, and the ambition is there, but along with the ambition, there needs to be definitely a degree of financial planning. We saw some of the numbers in terms of tuition, room and board, and things like that. That definitely needs to be accounted for, right? And if you start a plan nice and early for it, it can be much less of a daunting process. So that's one on the financial side, but also in terms of putting the application together. Too many students are doing, generic extracurriculars. And I want to mention that using your breaks, so your summer break and your winter break from school in high school, to really do some standout extracurriculars, maybe an independent project, right? Maybe a really substantial service project where you're traveling somewhere. And I recently had a student who made a documentary about the plight of a certain community within and so that documentary really stood out as a key differentiator in the student's application. So some extracurriculars. I will say that for students who are looking to go into STEM fields in specific, research is really, really important as well, right? So if you find a lab to do research in, under the guidance of a professor or a PhD student, that is definitely something that, you should be looking at. And then lastly, I think that, a last pitfall or challenge that sometimes families run into is, an overemphasis on just the rankings and the prestige of universities and less on the fit for the student. So I think at Crimson and my personal philosophy, really, really, it's important to balance the two. Of course, you want to make sure that you're getting that return on investment through the brand value of the university, but it really needs to be a good fit in terms of the culture, the size, things like that, to make sure that the student has a fulfilling experience as well.
That's a very valid point talking about prestige and not, sometimes we overlook the fit part, which is so important as you navigate this process.
Yes. So I did want to, so I talked about some of the things to perhaps avoid, but I also want to talk about some of the criteria that you should consider. So one, I already mentioned, it's not all about rank. Two is definitely, these students who are applying, they are only 16, 17 years old. And so definitely want to make sure that they have the support system in place, right? So whether it is at an organization and getting mentors through an organization like Crimson, whether they have that support system at school, the parents being kind of involved in the process, I think that really makes a difference. But aside from that, kind of diving deep into each university while doing research into different universities to see what are the academic programs, what is the campus culture, what are some of the offerings, right? And then, of course, the career potential as well. So, talking to people from who maybe alumni of your current high school who have gone to these universities, picking their brains, going through some of the Reddit channels, some of the website, definitely will give you a good idea as to, the overall feel of a university outside of just the ranking. And I think that can be really, really important.
Thanks. Thank you, Ishan. That's really helpful. So over to you, Nandini. I would like to ask this question to you. How should parents invest for their child's university fund? And how basically Stashaway can help them in this journey.
So I think if you can help me, I think we have a short poll to quickly.
Sure, I'll quickly launch that for you so we can get a sense about how the audience is currently working towards building their education fund.
And maybe we can take 5 seconds to
Sure.
people to answer.
Okay, so we have last 1 second. Okay, so I'll end the poll now. Share your results. Majority are investing in equities, bond portfolio, and cash savings.
Cash savings, yeah. Okay, great. So hopefully this will be helpful to most of you. And I think the most important thing, which just like, preparing for where you want to go, how you want to get there, how do you want to get, that admission process going, prepping early just puts you in an advantage situation. I think, from a financial perspective, even before, it just makes it so much easier. And if we go to the next slide, you can just see what does that mean. And so, if we're looking at, at 18 and overall cost, with a bit of buffer, preparing for almost something like $500,000, if you're starting at age 10 versus starting, super early on, some of us are that organized, but every few years really matters on what actually it means in terms of a monthly saving burden, and going from $3,600 down to just a monthly burden of $970. And starting early is not just about that, oh, you just had a whole lot more number of months to save. That is a part of it, but next slide, please. The most important thing is, you can just click through, sorry. So while saving is good, starting even earlier actually gives you an opportunity to invest, which is even better. Next slide, please. And this is, because of a very, very simple impact of compound effect. And so, if you are starting earlier, you can see the difference between what in that 500K actually you have to contribute in total as cash. And so that's the burden on you. And that goes down to $209,000 out of the 500K if you're starting literally 18 years earlier, to even starting at 10, it's 348,000 that you are contributing out of the 500,000. And this is because you are investing that money rather than saving it just in a bank account or in a very, very low yield account. And that's just giving your money that has been saved early on much longer time to earn returns and reinvest those returns. And I think it's a math that is really important for people to think about, because you can lower that burden so much more. Also take into account, as we saw, the impact of inflation. If your savings are only being managed at 0.05% or at a very low interest rate of 0.5%, which is what most savings account will give, it doesn't even fight the inflation that is just there in normal goods and services over the time frame, leave alone the inflation that already exists, in the tuition fee, which tends to be higher than the usual goods and services inflation. And so it's really important to think about, how every dollar that you are saving and the burden of on your paycheck, how can that actually be distributed with a little bit of work being done by the markets, and therefore actually thinking about the horizon that allows you to invest that money, rather than a horizon that only allows you to save that money. And obviously, the longer you wait, the less time you have to also deal with the volatility of the market. And I'll share a little bit of that as well. As most of you have seen, 2022 wasn't a really great year. But then, 2023, 2024 have been really strong years of the market. So there is a cycle as well to cater into when we think about investing as a really key source of being a way to fund kids' education and being able to reach that goal. Next slide, please. And one of the plans, and very a popular investment product that we see a lot in Singapore, a lot in the other countries as well in Asia, is an endowment plan. And that's a very traditional vehicle that has been entrenched in how we think about certain goals, where we do need a level of certainty. But endowment plans also require that we are thinking about on a very long period of time. And I want to drill a little bit down between, using this as an example, to what you should really pay attention to. So the biggest pro of an endowment plan is that you have a level of guarantee at the end. But you have to remember that in all investment products, a guarantee always comes at a cost. And the more time frame you have available in your investment strategy, obviously it allows you, to kind of understand what risk you can or cannot take. So over here, if you are, this is an example of, the most popular endowment plans. You are making monthly investments, up to 15 years. And then at the age of 19, 20, 21, when are the 3 years where your child is actually at university and you need to pay those installment, there are those timed payouts, and there is a fixed amount that gets paid out. It's very simple. You can back calculate. There will be, installments that you have to pay over a 15-year period. This comes to, in this example, you have contributed $70,980. There is no fee structure that is usually shared in it, because what is shared with you is the guaranteed return at the end. And that's at 19, 20, 21, payout of $20,000, $22,500, and $25,000, which are very well matched to what you expect your cost to be. And you can take multiples of this in terms of overall cost of an endowment plan, or how much you save into it. Now, while it might look like two very big numbers of you put in $71,000 and you got out about $92,000, that seems like a big enough difference between the two numbers to get out. But where you have to pay attention is, what is the time frame in which you got this investment, and what did that really mean for you? This took 21 years. Gradually for over 15 years, first contributing to it, waiting for a period, seeing the guaranteed payout. The pro is that you know what you will get out, and you can count on it. But when you look at the annualized return that you are getting on this money, it is 1.3%. That is a very low return, and you have to understand this return in the context of this is the cost that you pay for the price. It's the price of having a guaranteed return. And of course, along with this, there is a term life insurance that comes, and term life insurance is by far the most commoditized product because it's an expense. There is no other investment component to it. So, you have very easy way of actually looking in the market of what a 20-year term life insurance would actually cost you, especially when you are looking at it at a very young age of yourself, in your 30s, in your 40s, rather than in your 50s and your 60s, which is the time frame we tend to think about kids' education. So this is a very tailor-made product to really cater to a need and cater to the need of a guaranteed return. But knowing what you are paying for that guaranteed return is really important. Next slide, please. As some of you, already shared that about 50% of you are actually, looking at investing or are invested already in equities and bonds portfolios. If it is not really tied to your kids' education, this is where we would really encourage you to also think about it, very much tied to the goal of your kids' education, because without intensifying your risk, having a very diversified portfolio, keeping it in a low cost structure of ETFs, which usually cater between around 20 bips, so 0.2% cost, versus unit trusts, which will usually cost you between 0.8 to 1.2% per annum. Just a diversified portfolio without running after high risk all into the market, the difference between an annualized return of, here as an example of this diversified portfolio at 6.4% returns versus, a 1.3% return in endowment plan basically means that is the cost that you are paying for a guaranteed return. And I think it's really important for people to consider, especially when they have longer timelines, that they can actually prepare for. Of course, if you are, 2 years, 3 years out, even this is maybe not the level of risk that you can take, which is into equities or even into bonds sometimes. But I think the moment you cross a 5-year timeline, it is really important to think about what is the level of risk that you can take and how can that work in terms of just lowering down the contribution that you would have to make out of your paycheck versus, capitalizing on the market's return. Next slide, please. And so, even if we just take a very conservative example of a very conservative portfolio where you are not taking any risk. We clarify it by a 6.5% index, which is you're talking only bonds and some gold, very, very little to absolutely no equities. Even that over a long period of time where the markets have gone through multiple cycles of COVID, of 2022, crash. We're talking here big 15 to 30% market crash. But even that over a longer horizon actually beats that 1.3% return that you are getting from an endowment style product, which actually costs you for the guaranteed returns. While if you are one of those people, or you are helping somebody in your network actually think about this much earlier, and you are getting 15 years or even anything close to 10 years time to actually do the financial planning, you can afford to think about whether a higher risk index actually works for you, and you can see the annualized return difference that it can make. At the end of the day, the most important thing is these tools are available to you if we start early, if we prep early, both in terms of getting our kids ready, as well as in terms of getting, the financial planning ready. But when we look for guaranteed returns, we always have to remember that there is a price that we pay for it, and time is the most important, factor that you have on your hands to actually lower that cost and still have a very high surety of reaching the goals, the financial goals that are going to help you achieve the educational goals for your kids. So maybe with that, I will pass it back to Ishan and Nikita.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Nandini. This is quite helpful. I think few, if any, start investing with a large sum of money. And for many, growing your wealth happens over years, right? And it's a slow and steady process. So this is same ideology which actually applies to even application process. So Ishan, I would like to understand from you, like, how early should students start preparing for university applications?
Yeah, so I do think that there can be a parallel that can be drawn between the financial planning and the planning for applications. Just like with the financial side of things, I think that it's important to start planning and preparing nice and early, right? So US and UK universities look at the last 4 years of your high school experience and your results for those 4 years. And so I think that making sure to get started at least in ninth grade, right, is going to be important while packaging things up. So I think that one is in terms of extracurriculars, if you start off in ninth grade, especially if you get involved in some different clubs and activities, as you make your way into, say, 11th, 12th grade, you can then start to get leadership positions in those activities, right, which are going to be really, really great for your overall application. The other thing is that, as I mentioned, using your breaks wisely. So, you really want to make sure that between 9th and 10th grade, 10th and 11th grade, 11th and 12th grade, you're getting in whether it's a summer program, whether it is some sort of an internship. So that's going to be really important. So I would say that it gives you the time to firstly in the first few years maybe explore around as to what's out there, and then maybe in the last couple of years, 11th and 12th grade, really focusing in on what you've actually chosen, right? So you can start building your profile towards there. And then of course, as Nandini has driven home the point, that starting to invest early on in terms of the financial side of things is really important. So overall, in this process, starting early will definitely pay off in the long run.
So actually, I wanted to share something because I was in last year I was in a webinar with Ishan on the same topic, and my son was in year 10 at the time. And so he has started to think about Bocconi. And so taking Ishan's, advice, he and I have planned a trip to Central Asia because he wants to take geography as his IB major. And so, I told him, okay, you need to think about something unique that you will do and how are you going to really show your passion. And so he has picked Central Asia to go through Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, and Uzbekistan to then actually try to write his paper on it. So
Wow,
this was last year. I was like, okay, I know what to say to you.
very interesting.
And so that's exactly the type of things that, if you get started and Nandini's son obviously found an interest in geography and has decided to go down that path, doing something a little bit off the beaten path, going to Central Asia, checking it out, seeing different initiatives over there. Those are the kind of things that not only is going to stand out in an application because that's secondary, but there's so much self-development that can come at that age, going there with your mom, going there solo, whatever the case might be. There's so much that you can absorb during that time period as well. So I think that's really great to hear, Nandini.
Wow. That's pretty inspiring. And, you never know what one conversation can lead to. So, thank you, Ishan, for that. And yeah, I mean, with that, we have actually reached an end of our panel discussion. This was quite insightful, and I hope our audience found this helpful as well. So with that, I would like to launch another poll and ask all of you if you would like to speak with us, or schedule one-on-one session with Crimson or Stashaway expert. You can actually react to this poll, and we can then reach out to you to schedule one-on-one consultation to answer any specific query that you have. I'll leave the poll for some time. So these consultations are completely free of charge for families. It's an opportunity for you to get your queries answered, get more clarity about, your child's profile, their strengths and weaknesses, identify what could be the strategy going forward. And even for, with Stashaway, you can explore a lot of investment solutions, no matter what age your child is at, how you can maximize your investment opportunities at this stage. So with that, I would like to end the poll and moving on to the next slide, please. Quickly, I'll cover about how at Crimson we support families. As Ishan mentioned, that building a standout application for top universities isn't a sprint. It's a carefully planned journey, and that ideally begins as early as grade 8, 9. So that's what we do at Crimson. We have mapped out this journey into 4 critical phases. Ishan, if you could go to next slide, please. Yeah, we start with ideation, helping students explore and discover their true passion. This evolves into candidacy building, where we strategically develop activities and outreach opportunities for them. And through the execution phase, we help them strengthen their leadership skills and help them demonstrate their real impact. So finally, in the application assembly phase is when, it's time for them to showcase these achievements effectively. But you don't have to navigate this entire journey all alone. If you go on to next slide, please. At Crimson, we provide, next slide, Ishan. Yeah. At Crimson, we provide you a team of experts who work with every student through this process. Every student is matched with what we call as a strategy consultant. Ishan is one of our strategy consultant who oversee the entire application from start to finish with the student, and he's your main point of contact at Crimson. And they are then supported by the team of experts, academic tutors who ensure you're academically more competitive, an extracurricular mentor who helps build a standout profile. There's an essay mentor who help craft your compelling narratives. There's former admission officer as well in the team who provide you invaluable perspectives, on how you can put forward a strong application. And there is student success team as well, helping you keep everything on track. What makes this program stand out is how it adapts to each and every student's need and interest. It is structured enough to provide you clear direction, but flexible enough to accommodate your individual goals and learning styles as well. So with that, I'll move on to our last slide. We do understand it does take a village to achieve outstanding results. If you would like to schedule one-on-one session with us, you can scan this QR code, or you can simply respond to this last poll. And one of our academic advisors, they will reach out to you to schedule consultation. You can either schedule a 60-minute profile review session or a 15-minute quick call to get your queries answered. And, if you decide to work with us, you can also avail a 5% discount on our services by 30th of March. So I'll leave the poll for some time, and then we can move on to the next slide.
Yeah, we have a small offer if you're keen to get your investment strategy down. But in any case, we have a team of client engagement experts. Whether you are a customer or not, you can reach out to them via email. They are always happy to engage and explain, how you can think about the journey. But we also do, other free webinars around thinking about personal finance, thinking about goal setting for your personal finance, and how to think through then strategies, whether that's something that you execute afterwards on the Stashaway platform or by yourself in any other way. We have a lot of educational content that is free, whether in seminars or on our website. So please do feel free to take advantage of it. Along with the retirement, I think especially in Asia, we all think about kids' education as a really important part of our life goals. And it's also one of the things that we always share with our clients, is that neither of the two, your retirement or your kids' education, neither should be coming at the expense of the other. And there are ways to, plan for both and make sure that you and your kids can be successful. So yeah, there are other webinars that we do around personal finance and investing. Please feel free to join them.
Thank you so much, Nandini. And with that, we would like to open up the session for Q&A. We do have some questions. So the first question is, what is the cost to engage Crimson? So for that, I would suggest you to schedule one-on-one consultation with us, because our services are very personalized and, to the specific need of the student and the family. So please feel free to schedule the session with us, and we can then analyze what service is most suitable for your student. Another is, do you have any advice for funding of a master's program in the US? Does Crimson offer? Yes, we do support with postgraduate admissions as well. So again, please schedule a consultation and we can take you through how we can help you in this process. Nandini, do you have any advice on funding for master's program?
I mean, funding for any program.
program.
I think the person over here means maybe probably from a financial aid perspective, but funding from your own end, definitely looking at the amount 120K. Think about the number of years that you have, and therefore, what does that mean for you? Masters, you could also think about whether you want to actually you want to work between your bachelor's and your master's. To actually then, save up. And if you're self-funding it without parents' help, or, partially at least self-funding it. So yeah, there are those type of life strategies, I would say, probably also possible.
Yes, and then there are universities that actually offer financial aid and scholarships also for students for master's programs. So we can definitely, we help students with, strategizing the application accordingly. So we can talk more about it, share when you schedule the consultation with us, so we can understand more about your requirement. Okay. But last but not the least, Nandini, just very curious how you're planning your kids' education fund, because you yourself are, expert in this. So I was just pretty curious to understand how it is working out for you. You have two teens.
Look, I have a 16-year-old who doesn't really know what he wants to do. Like I said, he enjoys the subject of geography, so we are very focused on him actually exploring the subject more and really enjoying it, and hopefully, he'll find something to create value out of that education. My daughter, on the other hand, who is 14, is very, very clear. She wants to do psychology and art, and at Cambridge. So I know exactly what I have to do on my front. And I try, and last time also, what Ishan had shared, so I try to at least put her on the right path. She has a few more years ahead of us, so we are well prepared. But yes, so I have both things in my house, one who knows exactly what she wants and the other who doesn't as yet. So we are just kind of trying to focus on them learning and being enjoying that learning path and finding a bit of passion in the subject first.
That that's amazing. I'm sure you'll find the way out. But yeah, it's always the case. One who is very sure what he wants to do and one who is clueless, and it's completely all right. Last question, Ishan, that we'll take for today is how to prepare for application for merit scholarship. Could you help us answer this? Is it similar to university applications when they are applying for scholarship applications, or is it a lot more tough?
It's a little different. So typically how it works for US merit scholarships, you first apply just in terms of for the university through their regular application portal, and the merit scholarship usually comes after. For some of them, you can indicate, that you would like to be considered for a merit scholarship in the application itself, and so it goes as part of the application. But for the majority of them, you have to apply separately, and so sometimes the merit scholarship would like to see an essay written, or an additional piece of a supplementary, but a lot of it is just to do with specific grades that you might have gotten. They might have asked for a letter of recommendation, so it really depends from scholarship to scholarship as to what the criteria is.
Okay, this is helpful. And last question we have, can scoring top ranks in IB give students an upper hand in selection?
Yeah, of course. If you have higher scores, that's definitely going to give you a leg up. I think that's needless to say. That whether it's for the US or the UK, it is going to be important on the academic side of things to try to get the highest score that you can get, and then there's the stuff on top of that as well that needs to be focused on.
Yeah, 100%. Academics definitely hold a lot of importance, both for Ivy League, top US or UK universities. So that would really give you an edge. And with that, we have come to an end of our session. Thank you so much, Nandini. Thank you so much, Ashan, for your time. I hope our audience found a lot of insights in this session, and hopefully we can do one more, pretty soon. Thank you for joining us once again, and
Thanks
have a
so
good
much.
evening.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.